welcome back. I'm so glad you decided to join me for this week's edition of R685 Reflections. Just kidding. Today we're going to be talking about week number 2, and the topic of this week's discussions was digital literacy skills. And this is an interesting topic because there are some arguments and some people saying that perhaps the literacy skills of the digital age are different and maybe better, maybe worse than generations past. And so we're going to talk just a little bit about that. While we don't have a ton of time, I'm basically just going to be talking from one of the articles that we looked at, and that was the one entitled Learning for the 21st Century. And they start off this paper with, or this report with a question that says, how can we best prepare students to succeed in the 21st century? And so they go through and identify what they call the 6 critical elements for creating 21st century skills. Some of these skills and some of these things they identify I agree with very much, and some of them I don't necessarily agree with. So I'm going to talk about these 6 critical elements, and the first one is emphasize core subjects. Now, I gotta be honest, this is the one that I have perhaps the most problems with, because I disagree with their core subjects that they identify. And the core subjects that they identified in this report were actually from the No Child Left Behind Act. And they identified them as English, reading or language arts, mathematics, science, foreign languages, civics, government, economics, arts, history, and geography. Now, reading through this list, I don't really think that that sounds like a list of 21st century core subjects. That sounds very, very much like a 20th century skills at the least, and maybe even 19th century skills. I just don't see how some of these are the absolute core subjects that should be taught in today's schools. With such a diverse global population that we have today, I think there should be great emphasis on geography and world geography at that. Perhaps even more world history. I definitely think English is extremely important, and language arts and foreign languages. Don't get me wrong, I'm not discounting that math and science are very important. However, I do think that in today's society, where so many students, when they go to college, and certainly this is dependent upon universities, but many of the most popular majors are things like business and communication and education, elementary education. Why don't we have more classes such as statistics, or even more important things like leadership, management skills, interpersonal communication skills? I think that those should be some of the core subjects, and even subjects like creativity. Maybe those should be more of the core subjects, intercontinent, world communication, some of those kinds of things. And some of this does go into their second element here, which is emphasize learning skills. So perhaps I overreact, because I do very much like these skills that they talk about in the second point. They basically give 3 skills here: the information and communication skills, thinking and problem-solving skills, and then interpersonal and self-directed skills. And I absolutely agree. I think that these 3 are very important. The information and communication skills, again, in this global economy, the technology plays a big part of this, and that's also what enables us to have this global communication. Thinking and problem-solving skills they're important in any field, no matter where you go into. So I just thought it was interesting to kind of compare the learning skills to what they call the core subjects, because I agree with the learning skills and disagree with the core subjects. Now let me move on here to the third subject, or the third critical element. They list as use 21st century tools to develop learning skills. So for example, they say you need to be proficient with current technology, and this enables global communication. Again, I fully agree with this, that we need to be able to utilize these tools to develop more digital literacy. And I think that the argument can be made that students today have more opportunities to read, and because of things like the internet and portable media devices that allow them to read both text and also or read text, but also movies or audio. There's certainly no argument we have access to more information today. Whether or not the students are able to process and understand that, is a subject for a lot of research that many people are involved with. Fourth subject that I want to move on to here is teach and learn in a 21st century context. This is an interesting subject here because talking about the 21st century context, and this one talks about using both real-world examples both inside and outside of the schools. I really like their second point. I think this is a key point that we have this need to incorporate participation from communities, employers, community members, and especially parents in the schooling. I think that's something that's greatly lacking today and certainly has been in the past. I would love to see more corporate participation. If corporations are interested in having better trained employees, then they should be involved. They should be involved in sponsoring activities, and I know that many of them certainly do right now, but I certainly think that there's room for improvement. The fifth critical element that they bring up here is teach and learn 21st century content. Again, we see this idea of global awareness, and again, this is, I think, much more important in today's society than it ever has been in the past. It's so important to know what occurs on a global scale because more than ever we are affected by what goes on in this global economy. They also talk about financial, economic, and business literacy. Again, I completely agree with that. I think that is very, very accurate. That certainly not everybody is going to be a business person or a financial advisor, but we need to have some literacy there. I think it's every bit as important for everybody to understand some of these business concepts. Perhaps it's more important that people understand some of these basic business and financial concepts than it is to understand, pre-calculus or physics, some of these other, math and science, some of these more traditional subjects. And the civic literacy as well. Again, I think it's very important for us to be involved in civics and understand how that works. The final point that they bring up here is to use 21st century assessment that measures 21st century skills. This is a very difficult topic because how do you have accurate assessments? It's a subject of much research, much testing, and it's difficult to have good assessments sometimes. But this last one caused me to raise a couple questions, and I'll just go through these questions, maybe just kind of for some self-reflection here. But what if creativity was tested? What if that was one of our core assessments? What if that was a standard test score that all of the states had to do, that students were measured in creativity? What if entrepreneurship was tested? That's something that could be very interesting in today's society, that if entrepreneurs were put into different groups than those that didn't have some of these entrepreneurship skills. What if debate skills were standardized? What if there was tests and assessments for debate skills? Some of these, and then the last one, what if communication skills were tested? I think that one, again, has application in a wide variety of contexts, these interpersonal communications. Just kind of as a quick summary here, as a quick finish, just an example of one of the classes that I took during my undergraduate program was it was a small group communication class, and for example, one of the assignments that we had to do is we had to take a 4-hour car trip with at least 2 or 3 other people. And it was, at first it kind of seemed a little bit strange, but it was a very good and very worthwhile activity because many times you're going to have these types of activities, these types of opportunities to simply interact while you're driving somewhere. You don't have a whole lot of other things that you can do. So these communication skills are extremely important. Hopefully I haven't gone too long this week. I appreciate you listening to this. I would appreciate any feedback that you have on these or something that you'd like to know more about. You may certainly contact me. My email is juswhiti@indiana.edu. And I hope you'll join us again next week to see week number 3. We'll be talking about ebooks and the explosion of ebooks. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.